Professional Fortnite players have some of the worst and most unoptimal binds. In fact, they almost all play on completely awkward binds that make little to no sense, like Scroll, who, as his name suggests, has to use the scroll wheel to switch between all 4 of his build pieces. The optimal bind trap is one that I fell for back when I played controller, and then I fell for it again when I switched to keyboard and mouse. On the controller, there just aren't that many buttons, and there are a lot of binds. On a controller with no paddles, I found it impossible to have good movement since jumping requires you to press the A button with your thumb, or awkwardly use your index finger if you play with claw, so this forced me into buying a controller with paddles on the back. But I found the issue with this was that pressing the edit key was slow and clunky on the back paddle, and I couldn't press it fast enough. So I decided to move that to the L1 button, which meant I had to switch my builds to one of the paddles. But then I realized that because I have 2 fingers on top of the controller, this made a large stretch between the middle and ring finger, which made the bottom 2 fingers tense and slow. No matter what binds I switched around, my gameplay never really improved. I'd fix one problem, like the editing speed, then I'd create another, and this cycle would continue. It also does not help that 99% of controllers break after a few months, especially ones with good paddles. So moving to keyboard and mouse was my fix for this, and it has more buttons, so obviously the same issue wouldn't happen again, right? Typically there are 6 major binds that you want to spread across as many fingers as possible. The 4 build binds, edit, and shotgun. Outside of the movement keys, these are the 6 binds that every single player will press the most, so if these binds are in awkward places, then it can really slow down your mechanics. Of course, there are a lot of other important binds like jump, the assault rifle button, and crouch, but these aren't ones that people typically optimize for, they're usually secondary. On keyboard and mouse, most players try to spread these 6 major binds out across 2 of their mouse side buttons and the fingers on their left hand as much as possible. In theory, this makes a lot of sense. It's a bad idea to have too many binds on one finger, as there's a delay in moving your finger from one button to another. If there's already another finger on that button, the delay is removed. If, for example, you use your floor on E and then your cone on C, you could press both of these with your index finger, but it'd be much easier to press E with your index and then C with your thumb. Try this on the surface in front of you, but don't do this on a keyboard if you've got it in front of you, because you'll probably just tab out or skip around this video. Tap one finger back and forth as if you had 2 buttons there that you were pressing. Now try it as fast as you can. Now try to push these 2 imaginary buttons with 2 fingers instead, alternating between the 2. You'll almost definitely notice that there's just no way one finger can be as fast as 2. Everything I've said so far sounds great in theory, and I'm sure you all agree because I'm always right. So does it make sense that Peterbot, the fastest and undisputed best competitive player right now, has 3 build binds and his edit on one finger? Well, in order to understand this, you first need to understand the big problem with keyboard and mouse binds. One of the biggest issues that I very quickly realized when I switched from controller is the movement. When you're playing on controller, your left thumb moves the joystick, leaving the other 4 fingers on that hand to press whatever buttons you want. But on the keyboard and mouse, you use your index, middle, and ring finger to move. Given your right hand is on the mouse and not on the keyboard, this means that the only fingers free to press any other keyboard binds is the little finger and the thumb on your left hand. So in order to press a lot of the binds, you have to take your fingers off of W, A, S, and D in order to hit these buttons, which limits your movement. For example, if you want to press F to edit, you use your index finger, but your index finger is what you use to press D when you walk to the right. This means that the vast majority of players cannot walk to the right and edit at the same time, which is a big limitation. Almost regardless of what binds you use, you're going to be limited in some way. Pro player Queasy has wall bound to Q, so he can't place a wall whilst walking to the left, and he also has floors bound to R and stairs bound to T, meaning that he can't walk to the right whilst pressing these with his index finger. Vico, who won FNCS last season, uses his thumb to press X and C, which are his binds for wall and floor, his little finger to press shift for cone, and then has his stairs on his mouse side button. This means that he can move in any direction and press any of his build binds, as none of these use his WASD fingers. But this still means that he has 2 binds built to one finger, which is on his thumb. And I'll be honest, I have no idea how he builds this fast with his thumb and doesn't accidentally mash the spacebar all the time, but even this layout still has problems. If you watch him free build in slow motion, you can see how things like his cones and floors can always place at the same time, since he can press both of these buttons with 2 different fingers. But if you watch him place a wall and then a floor, there's actually a bit of a noticeable delay between these 2, as he has to move his thumb from C to X. Then to edit with E, he still has to move his index finger off of D, so like most people, he can't walk to the right and edit. And then there's also Scroll, who with just under $75,000 earned, has all 4 of his build binds buttons on his mouse. Scroll presses Q to switch between his weapons to open his build menu, and then he uses the scroll wheel to select which build he wants to place. It also seems like he doesn't have reset building choice enabled either, which means that when he switches to his build bar, it doesn't automatically reset to a wall like it does for most people on controller. Instead, it pulls out the last build piece he used, and then he has to scroll up or down to select the correct build piece. The only exception to this is that he uses a mouse button for cone, which allows him to press the floor and then the cone quickly, creating a double instantly. I won't lie, he's not Peterbot, okay? His mechanics are not that cracked. He builds way less than any other pro. He plays slowly, but he understands angles and peaks very well, and he's really good at getting in the box. His aim is amazing. And, of course, because of this, he has phenomenal movement because he's not really limited by his left hand. He plays to his strengths. Now, speaking of Peterbot, his solution to the keyboard movement problem is one that I haven't seen any other pro player do, and it's probably one I wouldn't recommend. His build binds are on T, Y, F, and V, with his edit bind on G. Now, if you're looking at that on your keyboard, you'll notice that this looks incredibly inefficient, yet he's literally the fastest competitive player. When I asked him how he does this, he told me that he uses his index finger to hit T for wall, Y for floor, F for stairs, G for edit, and all of his weapon and inventory slots outside of his shotgun, which is on his mouse. Then, in order to hit the cone on V, he also uses his thumb. So this means that he hits 4 of the 6 major binds with one finger, which on the surface seems incredibly inefficient. Now, if you try this, you'll realize this is a massive stretch, and it just feels incredibly uncomfortable. Like, how is he meant to walk to the right at all with his index finger whilst hitting these binds? But the way that Peterbot achieves this isn't actually by using a traditional WASD setup. To hit these movement keys, Pete uses his little, ring, and middle fingers to press W, A, S, and D instead of the ring, middle, and index. This frees up his index finger to hit all of these buttons as he likes, and there may be some validity to this. Any musician out there will know how useless the little finger is in comparison to any other finger, so restricting it to literally just walking left with A and reloading with Q actually makes a lot of sense. In terms of dexterity, which is the skill in performing tasks, the little finger is the slowest and the weakest. But strength and speed aren't the only important factors. Individualization is also incredibly important. Now try this out. Straighten and bend your ring finger. You'll see that your middle finger also moves a little bit. And the opposite is also true if you move your middle finger. Now remember when I said I struggled with the stretch and tension in my hand when I was playing with paddles back in the controller? This is exactly why. These two fingers are connected by a tendon in the middle, and they can't move independent of one another. Now, this doesn't make these two fingers useless by any means, but it goes to show the importance of the index finger and the thumb, since these can move entirely independent of the other fingers, and they are strong unlike that crappy little finger. With this in mind, it isn't entirely surprising that Peterbot can have nearly all of his 6 major binds just spread across these two, as they are 2 of the most versatile fingers. So all of these players I've mentioned have something inefficient with their binds, and that's because there are no optimal binds. Every single layout has some form of issue, but this isn't actually the trap. The trap is thinking that you'll massively improve if you switch to optimal binds, which also, as I mentioned, don't exist. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you'll see I've posted 2 videos in 2023 about switching to quote-unquote optimal binds. In short, I move my hand to the middle of the keyboard so I can use my thumb to hit right alt easier for cone, and then this means that my movement binds would be UH-JK instead of WASD, but I move my walk right to Y instead of K so that my ring finger moves between Y and H to move left and right. This frees up my index to edit faster, which is on K, which means I, unlike a lot of these other players, can walk to the right as I edit. Now, I have absolutely improved over the last 2 years. My mechanics now are way better than they ever have been. But is this really because of the fact that I switched my binds, or because I've just been playing for another 2 years on top of that? Even with the binds I have now, which are about as optimal as I can get them for myself, I still have to press I for floor with my index, which means there's still 2 major binds on the same finger. Like I said, there are no such thing as completely optimal binds. Overhauling my binds took around 4 months to get used to, and to this day, I'm still changing minor binds around like inventory and map and traps when I accidentally hit them. But what if I just stayed with my old binds? Well, that's what Peterbot did. This video is from the 2nd of August, 2021, which is just under 4 years ago. Notice his strange binds were the same back then as they are now. He may have changed something around small like I did, but the main major binds are exactly the same. Just like my optimal binds are not the reason I'm some cheeks. That's unfortunately just on me. The big young calc said it best 5 years ago. Optimal binds are a myth, and if you change binds, you are stupid. Now, I don't necessarily agree that changing them makes you stupid, but changing them and thinking you're going to be an entirely different breed of player just isn't true. And this is the trap of optimal binds. With this being said, a lot of people will be wondering what are the best binds. And I think looking at Vico, Cooper, and Noah Rayleigh's makes the most sense. They're all some of the most mechanical players out there, and their binds are extremely efficient. These players, similar to Peterbot, have all been using these binds for over 3 years. They all have one build bind on C, which they hit with their thumb. Then 2 of the build binds are on their mouse side buttons, but in Vico's case, he has 2 on his thumb, which is C and X, as we said earlier. Then they all also use left shift for cone, which they hit with their little finger. So basically, no build binds on any of the movement fingers. Both Vico and Noah use their index finger for editing, which makes sense, as this is the finger you need to be the fastest with. Then Cooper strangely uses his thumb to edit on V. Q for shotgun makes the most sense, which Cooper and Vico use, as you can just hit your edit with your index finger and then quickly pull out your shotgun using your ring finger on Q. So my suggested optimal quote-unquote binds are basically what Cooper uses, but with edit on F, as most people probably won't be as accurate with edit and wall both on their thumb. Now, Peterbot's binds may be very strange, but they're not the reason he's the player he is. If you want to find out why it's literally impossible to beat Peterbot, click on this video on screen right now.